back to Chapter 5, Ring of Forgotten Power of Quag by Alice Norton. There was some difficulty in restraining the animals. However, they slowed as best they could as Ingrid loosed his own mount in a gallop. The elf knew very well what he was about. He found them shelter, snug against detection. Visual detection, that was, for one could never be sure if someone of power were screening or casting about to pick up intimations of life. It was beyond the skill of all save a near adept to hide from such discovery. Rocks by the river had been something of an understatement. Here the stream, shrunken in this season before the coming of the late fall rains, had its bed some distance below the surface of the plain. There was a lot of tough brush and small trees to mark its length, and at the point where Ingrid had led them, something else. Water running wild in some previous season had bitten out a large section of the bank below a projection of rock, forming a cave, open-ended to be sure, but piling up of brush would suffice to mask that. In such place, they might dare a fire. The thought of that normal and satisfying heat and light somehow was soothing to the uneasiness Milo was sure they all shared, though they had not discussed it. They watered the animals after stripping them of their saddles and packs and put them on picket ropes to graze the scantily grass along the shrunken slip of the stream. Milo, Nail, Yvel, and Weirmac used their swords to chop brush, bringing the larger pieces to form a wall against the night. Shorter lengths to provide them with some bedding, though the soil and sand beneath that overhang were not too unyielding. Dean busied himself with arranging the armloads they dragged in, while Ingrid had prowled off on foot, heading along the water, both his nose and his eyes alert. He had found them this temporary camp, but his instincts to prepare against surprise must be satisfied. Gull squatted in the water, prying up small stones, his talons stabbing downward now and then to transfer a wriggling catch to his mouth. Milo, watching, schooled himself against revulsion. If the lizardman could so feed himself, it would mean that there would be lesser inroads on the provisions later. But he wanted no closer glimpse of what the other was catching. They did have their fire, a small one, fed by dried drift, near smokeless, though the lizard man appeared to have little liking for it, or perhaps for closer company with those of human and elfin kind. The rest sat in a half-circle near it. They would have a night guard, but as of yet only twilight. They need not set up such a patrol. Milo stretched out his hands to the flames. It was not that he was really chilled in body. It was the strangeness of all this that had gnawed at him until now. Though Milo Jagan had camped in like manner many times before, the vestiges of that other memory returned to haunt him. Swordsman! He was startled out of his thoughts by the urgency of that voice. Too much to his hand went to his sword hilt as he quickly glanced up, expecting to see some enemy that had crept past the elf by some trick. Only it was not Ingrid who had spoken, rather Dean, who leaned forward, his attention centered on Milo's hand. Swordsman, those rings. Rings? Milo once again extended his hands into the firelight. His attention had been so centered on the bright bracelet and what power it might have over him, or how he might have possibly bend it to his will, that he had forgotten the massive thumb rings. Apparently, they were much a part of the man he had become, that he was not even aware of their weight. One oval and cloudy, one oblong green veined with red. Neither seemed to be any gem of sure price, while the setting of both were only plain pans of very pale gold. What of them? He asked. Where did you get them? Dane demanded, a kind of hunger in his face. He pushed past Yvel as he did not see her, and before Milo could move, he squatted down and seized both the swordsman's wrists in a tight grasp, raising those captive hands closer to his eyes, peering avidly first at one of the stones and then the other. Where did you get them? He demanded a second time. I do not know. Not know? How can you not know? The cleric sounded angry. Do you forget who we are? Yvel moved closer. He is Milo Dragon, swordsman, just as you are Dean, cleric. But our memories are not complete. You tell me what they are. Milo's own voice rang out. What value do they have? Is your memory clear on that? He did not struggle to free himself from the cleric's grip. The rings were queer, and if they carried with them something either helpful or harmful, and this recorder and treasurer of strange knowledge knew it. The quicker he himself learned, too, the better. They are rings of power, Dane never glanced up from his continued scrutiny of the two stones. That much I know. Even with my halved memory, this one... He drew his hand with the green stone a fraction closer to the firelight. Do you not see something about it to remind you of another thing? Now Milo himself studied the stone. All he could pick out was a meaningless wandering of thread-thin lines with pinpoint dot near too small to be distinguished with the naked eye, here and there. What do you see, then? He did not want to confess his own ignorance, but rather pry out what the cleric found so unusual. It is a map! There was such certainty in the answer that Milo drew Dean was convinced. A map? Now Nail was, and Ingra moved closer. It is too small, too confused. The berserker shook his head. But the elf, inspecting the ring closely, reached for a small stick of the drift they had piled up to feed the fire, and with his other hand smoothed a patch of the earth in the best light those flames afforded. Hold still, he commanded. Now let us see. Looking from stone to ground and back again, he put the point of his stick to the earth and there inscribed a squiggle of lines or a dot. The pattern he produced showed nothing that made sense as far as Milo was concerned, but the cleric studied the drawing with deep interest. Yes, that is it, he cried triumphantly as Ingrid added a last dot and sat back on his heels to survey his own handiwork critically. However, nothing in that drawing awoke any spark of memory in Milo. If it had been of some value to the swordsman's part of him, that particular memory was too deeply buried now. Nothing I have ever seen, Nell delivered his verdict first. It was the bard who laughed, and judging by the expression on your comrade's face, he nodded to Milo, he is as baffled as you, berserker, even though he seems to be in full possession. Well, will your prayers now turned to Dean, or your scout eyes, he addressed Ingrid, provide us with an answer? As a bard, I am a far wanderer, but these lines mean naught to me. Or the battle maiden. Or can the battle maiden find us an answer? There was a moment of silence, and then all answered at once, denying any recognition. Milo twisted free from Devdine's hold. It would seem that this is a mystery past our solving. But why do you wear it? Persisted the cleric. It is my belief that you would have neither of those on you, he pointed to the rings, unless there was a reason. You are a swordsman. Your trade lies in weapons. Perhaps one or two simple spells, but these are things of true power. Which power? Yvel broke in. Not that of chaos, Devdine made up prompt answer. Were that so, Ingrid and I, even the Scald, would have a sense of them as much. Well, if we have in this map, which leads nowhere, Milo shook his right hand, then what lies within the other? He struck out the other thumb with the dull and lifeless stone. Devdine shook his head. I can't even begin to guess, but there's one thing, swordsman. If you are willing, I can try a small prayer spell and see if thus we can learn what you carry. Things of power are never to be disregarded. Men must go armed against them, for if they are used by the ignorant, then dire may be the result. Milo hesitated. Maybe if he took the rings off, he had no desire to be wearing them while Devdine experimented. Only when he endeavored to slip either from the resting place, he found they were as firmly affixed as the bracelet. The cleric, witnessing his efforts, did not seem surprised. It is even as I have thought. They are set upon you, just as the gas is set upon us all. Then what do? Milo stared at his hands. Suddenly, they had changed into visible threats. He shrank from things of power, which he did not in the past understand, and which, as Dean Dane pointed out, might even choose somehow to act or make him act by another's control. Do you wish me to try seeing? Milo frowned. He did not want to be the focus of any magic. But on the other hand, if these held any danger, he needed to know as soon as possible. All right, he replied, and with great reluctance. And with that, we conclude Chapter 5 of Quag Keep. I will be back tomorrow to begin Chapter 6. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the near future.